To you about the physical geography of Africa. So we're going to talk about different like mountain ranges, deserts, rivers, lakes, all kinds of different fun stuff, different landforms. We'll get into the climate, vegetation of Africa. So we're going to talk about like the general physical geography of Africa today. So here we go. All right, so the land. So Africa is the second largest continent. It has 11.7 million square miles throughout the entire continent. One of the biggest features of Africa, of its physical nature, is what's called the Great Rift Valley. Okay, so this stretches, as you can see on this map here, all the way up from Syria all the way down to Mozambique. Okay, so a rift valley is a large depression in the Earth's surface that's formed by shifting tectonic plates. So there's actually different plates right here. So there's a like a fault line here, and there's another one over here. So we have different tectonic plates here, and then as they move, they create like these depressions. Okay, so they've created faults in the Earth's crust, so like fractures in the Earth's crust. And then all along this line, there's volcanic eruptions and earthquakes that have shaped the landscape through millions and millions of years as well. Okay, so you can see right here, these are the different plates. So there's the Arabian plate, and then there's a Somali plate. So it goes like this, basically, right here. And then there's the Arabian plate. All right. And then Lake Tanganyika is a lake that is rimmed with mountains. And this is located, basically, there's Zambia and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So it's right, obviously, right in this area here. All right, so it's right there on the map. It even says Lake Tanganyika right there. And it's one of the deepest freshwater lakes. And it actually kind of looks like a fjord because there's a lot of like really steep cliffs and that along it. So it kind of looks like a fjord. Okay, so south of the Sahara, there are a series of plateaus, and their edges are marked by escarpments. So escarpments are like really steep, often jagged cliffs, and then the rivers that cross those plunge down those escarpments into cataracts or waterfalls. And so this is what we see right here. It depicted in this picture here is a cataract. So what happens is these rivers are not really navigable at those points. So like the Nile River, for example, will go across these, and there's a lot of cataracts throughout like the part of like Sudan, like Kenya, Sudan, that it goes through, because you can kind of see like there's a lot of mountain ranges in that. This whole area, like this is called like the Ethiopian highlands here, and it has a lot of cataracts all the way through, all the way up the Nile River. Okay, now once you get into Egypt, it's a little more navigable. Okay, so that it can be used for like transportation and trade and that. But most African mountains dot the eastern highlands. So as you can see on this map here, there's a lot of mountain ranges in this area. So the Rwenzori Mountains separate Uganda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So that's like right in here. Okay, and then the Drakensberg Range is in southern Africa, and it's right down in this area, and it rises more than 11,000 feet at its highest points. And then in the north, you have the Atlas Mountains. That's right up here. And the northern side of this is actually a really good climate. It's really ideal for farming because it gets a lot more precipitation than the southern part, as you can see, because it touches the Sahara Desert there. So, okay. So landforms and physical processes have influenced Africa's water systems. So there's a lot of deep lakes, like we just talked about Tanganyika, waterfalls, which we talked about, and rivers. So the largest lake in Africa is Lake Victoria, and this is actually the source of the Nile River, which happens to be the longest river in the world. Okay, so it is right here, and then it has there's mountains around here. And so what happens is when in the springtime, the snow melts off those mountains and it flows down into this lake. And so the lake bulges, and then the water escapes through the river. And so that's why every year, like the ancient Egyptians could almost set their watch to when the Nile was going to flood. And so they were able to use that for agriculture. Okay, and then Lake Chad. Lake Chad sits like kind of right in the middle of Central Africa, and it's fed by stream beds, but they only flow kind of intermittently. They are not like continuously flowing streams, but it's very shallow too, and it sits now in a desert climate. And so a lot of it has evaporated, and his experience was called desertification, which is basically like the spreading of the desert. Okay, and so this is caused by long droughts, and then land use that destroys vegetation, which we'll talk more about that. But basically, a lot of vegetation gets cleared for farmland and firewood and stuff like that. So. Okay, so this right here is a map basically of Lake Chad. As you can see, it has vastly dissipated. Okay, so in 1963, it was pretty good sized lake, and then desertification has happened and it has dried up. Okay, so this next picture is a satellite image. So this is from 1972 of Lake Chad, and then this is today. So a lot of this green is actually vegetation. Okay, so this darker blue is the actual lake. So you can see how much it's actually dried up in comparison to what it used to be. Okay, so rivers. So there's several rivers I want to talk about. So one is the Volta River. The Volta River sits right over here in Ghana, and it has been dammed to create one of the largest man-made lakes, which is called Lake Volta, so named after the river. And it has provided a lot of hydroelectric power. Basically, all of Ghana is powered by this river. And then the Niger River. The Niger River flows right here. Okay, there's a Niger River, and it flows northeast and then turns southeast to the Nigerian coast. So it actually goes like this, flows this direction, and then the delta is right here in Nigeria. So it is important to agriculture as well as transportation. Then you have the Zambezi River. This is in South Central Africa, and I don't think this one is. Oh, there it is. It is right there. So Zambezi River. And that is interrupted by waterfalls. So, like we saw in that picture before, so there's mountains that kind of go through there and that. And then one of the waterfalls is called Victoria Falls, and that plummets 355 feet. So that sits right on the border of Zambia and Zimbabwe. And then the Congo River is probably next to the Nile, probably the next longest river. But this is a very important river here. And it reaches the sea in a deep estuary. Okay, so there's an estuary right here, and this is where the fresh water meets the salt water. Okay, so it's like an inlet kind of where it comes in and meets the sea. Okay, or the ocean in this case. So, okay. Natural resources. So there's abundant natural resource in Africa. There is a ton of it. So mineral water resources. So like mineral resources. Like in West Africa, there's oil. Even all the way up into Northern Africa, there's oil. A lot of oil reserves. Nigeria has the most oil reserves, next to basically the United States. South Africa has about half the world's gold. Okay, so that's where we get a lot of gold from. Wherever there's gold, there's often uranium, and so it's very abundant in that area too. And then South Africa, Botswana, and Congo River Basin have major diamond deposits. So a lot of diamonds have been mined out of that area. So there's a lot of like very valuable real estate in that area. And then water is abundant south of the Sahara. Obviously, in the Sahara, it's a desert, so it's not quite as abundant, but they're able to use it for agriculture and hydroelectric power, but also solar power is used as well. And especially like when you get into the Sahara, you need to use, if you want to have electricity, you basically need to use solar power or some kind of like coal generated power. So this right here is just a map showing like where the various natural resources are. Okay, so you can see there, like I said, there's a lot of diamonds in like Southern Africa. There's some in West Africa. You got major oil deposits, so that's represented by these barrels of oil throughout like West Africa all the way up into Northern Africa. You can see bars of gold, okay, gold all over the place. So if you look at these natural resources, you'll probably think like, wow, it must be a pretty rich place. But the problem is their governments just they're not organized enough, or not like they're not noble enough or not corruptible, I guess. But they're very corrupt. So they take a lot of that for themselves and don't give it to the people, basically. So they are not obviously economically rich, but could definitely have the potential to be. So, okay. So climate and vegetation. So the tropical climate, so the rainforests are mostly near the equator. So you can see that on this map here in like these, this band basically of red. So there's a lot of jungles in this area. So they get more than 60 inches of rain a year. So in those areas, you see like shrubs, ferns, very tall trees. The palms, they kind of create a canopy, just like we talked about with the Amazon. There's a canopy over it, and then they get heavy rains. But the problem is those heavy rains like really leach the nutrients from the soil. So they like pull the nutrients from the soil as that rain hits, and then it dries up. But still, they are able to grow like kind of like tropical fruits like bananas, pineapples, coffee is another thing they're able to grow. Different things come out of there. Now the savanna, this is more of like a tropical dry climate. Okay, so this covers almost half of Africa. So this would be everything that's like the orange here. Okay, would be considered savanna. So rainfall is mostly seasonal. Okay, so they do get rain, but it's mostly in the wintertime. And then trees and tall grasses are the main feature of the landscape. So like when you think of the Serengeti, you probably think of like those really tall trees and like a lot of grass. So but they're kind of sparse. Those trees are sparse. So the Serengeti Plain is one of the largest savanna plains, and millions of animals live there. So things like zebras, giraffes, gazelles, hyenas, lions, cheetahs, all of those different animals live in the Serengeti Plain, which is like right in this area here. Okay. All right. Then dry climates. Obviously, the Sahara Desert that's the largest hot desert in the world. Okay, but it continues to expand due to desertification. So this could be caused by human land use and animal activity. So people strip trees for firewood, like I said before, and clear it for farming. Other deserts in Africa, so the Namib Desert and the Kalahari Desert, these are actually right next to each other. So the Kalahari Desert's like in this area, and then the Namib Desert's like right in this area here. Okay, and then the Sahel region's kind of like the transition. It's a savanna type climate or like a steppe type climate. So it's very dry. It's like an arid climate, and that basically makes a band, like basically all the way from Senegal all the way over to Ethiopia and Sudan. Okay, so you can see it depicted in this map here, and it's kind of like I said, a transition climate, almost like a steppe climate from the desert into the savanna and then into the tropical rainforest. So there's a lot of pastures of like really low growing grasses, shrubs, acacia trees. Those are the real tall ones with the kind of canopies. And then there are mid-latitude climates like humid continental, humid subtropical. You'll see that more in southern Africa, so right in this area here, marine west coast. And then you'll see highland climate in the Ethiopian highlands, which is right here, which is like basically a big plateau that goes across Ethiopia. Okay? All right, well, that's all I got for you today. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and don't forget to do your processor. All right, bye.